This is my life now. Yay.
We're live. Yeah. Hey,
We are live. We don't have anyone here, but we are live. Okay. All right.
I have a kitty too. It's
Aww. What? A bunch of warpers have black cats? What the hell's
No
going on? This is so
way.
weird.
weirdo.
Actually, I always make a point of adopting the black ones since they apparently still have problems getting adopted.
Yeah, I've heard that, and I can't believe that that's still a thing. But I don't know.
That's crazy. I can't believe that they would have such issues getting adopted. There's superstition behind it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of speculation that like people think they're bad luck, or that they're just not as like good at grabbing people's attention as the other ones. So, like I've heard anecdotally from people who take them out to adopt them that people just don't pay attention to them.
Yeah.
Like they don't get as much attention.
Wow.
Mm.
I would not have thought that.
I don't know. I think they're. I actually think they're beautiful. I think they're some of the prettiest cats. Yes, I'm talking about you.
Yeah. Black cats are some of my favorites.
So, like, we have Mr. Logan who has green eyes and Mr. Poe who has yellow eyes, and like she actually has like tortoiseshell eyes, and they're really pretty. I wonder if she's gonna keep them, or if she's gonna grow into just turn them. They're gonna just turn another color. Yay, we have viewers.
Woohoo!
Hey,
I have two black cats and then one black tortoiseshell. So they're all in that same kind of breed.
Nice.
I also have two black cats. And Michelle has
Well, I have 3.
Oh, damn, you got me. I used to have 3.
0.
0.
I have no
Do
cat.
you have any cats at all? Em? No.
I have 2 Bijans. They're tiny, fluffy white dogs.
Oh, okay.
They're adorable. I love
We need
them.
to get you some black cats to go with them.
Apparently, yeah. Good contrast.
Another blow for diversity on the player council. We have both cat and dog people.
Yeah.
Hey, Emily, I think you need to limit Bijans to Gander for Planetfall. So you get a couple of dogs.
Be good props for him, I'm sure.
Pretty
But
much.
no, Gander likes Pomeranians.
Pomeranians. It's the closest we got, man.
Yeah.
It's
Neither
a
here.
stand-in.
I think Giant Q-Tips is better than Pomeranian. Sorry.
It's a stand. I just don't want. I don't even want to know how they would do in the mud. Like white dog, light long-haired dogs in the mud. Oh my god.
Oh, they'd be just covered.
Yeah.
I'd be more concerned about the little sticker burrs. I have a Yorkie, and she gets sticker burrs in
Oh,
all
wow.
the time. Can you imagine those Q-Tips? Oh my goodness, it'd be horrible.
They're hard to get out too. Every
Yeah.
time I have an aunt who has the same dog, and they have a large backyard, and I'll bring my dogs over to visit, and they'll all come in covered in sticker burrs, and we just gotta like pick them all out and wash them, and it's crazy.
Yeah, my daughter's into a little gremlin when we try to take a sticker burr out of her hair. She just goes crazy.
I want to point out she's using the Xbox controller as a pillow. Gamer for life. Start them young. Alright. So we actually have people watching, so let's kick this pig.
Hey guys, we got cats and dogs.
Nah. We have officially opened everything up with a cat viewing. Alright, so this player council is going to be kind of weird because I wasn't at an event and we had a completely different event there. From my perspective, I think everyone did a terrific job considering the circumstances. There's a few oversights. There seem to have been some upset feelings about what happened last game. But overall, the game seemed to have gone well. There's been a lot of really good feedback about what happened. From my perspective, the only real misstep is leaving that trailer out at the park.
That's terrible.
Oh no.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be recoverable. I honestly didn't know about it, or at least then catch on that it was actually still out there, because I remember you mentioning something about getting the drop pod masks, but now I put it together that they were still in the drop pod when you went out there, Todd.
Yeah. Like, while I was there, I should have been messaging Calvin to see if he wanted me to just go ahead and hitch it up and tow it somewhere, but I was in a hurry and
Yeah.
I passed the buck, and now I feel bad about it.
Well, hopefully it'll be recoverable. It
Did
looks
it,
like it's recoverable.
did it flood horribly out there again?
Yeah, and the drop pod tipped over on its side.
Yeah. And it got pretty. Looks like it suffered some damage. However, it was fairly sturdily constructed, and we should have a place to fix it. Yeah, so that went pretty well. So Todd, since you were actually at said event, I should give you your feedback.
Okay, let's see here. Yeah, I mean, basically, Matt, we learned that we don't need you.
That's big.
That way I can go and work on other things.
No, but
My work here is done.
Sunshine's time.
The game went mostly smoothly from a GM standpoint. We didn't really have any, things that broke down horribly as far as the flow of the game. The only problem was, as you mentioned, that there were some unpleasantness, which was in character, but people were suspicious that it might have had out of character motivations, and there was a little bit of acrimony. I don't know how much we want to go into that here, but
Well, this is the place to go into it.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess I won't comment on it, or at least I won't start the commentary. I'll leave that to the player council. I think that's more their job.
Well, I will. I'll offer my perspective on it from the very beginning, just to set some baselines. So, as you know, there were 3 Triad member characters who were arrested last game. They were arrested by Bryce's character, and they were interrogated, and one of them was interrogated, one of them committed suicide, and I take it back, there were two Triad members who were arrested. One of which was interrogated and by the Rangers and by Bryce's character after being Bryce was ordered to arrest them, and the punishment was doled out to one of them, and one of them decided to commit suicide. Now, to clarify some matters when it comes to accusations of targeting which surface, because one of our other players who was not present decided that he was going to quit the game based on these events and did so publicly, with the tacit accusation, or I'm sorry, it's just a flat-out accusation that this was the product of OOC feelings, specifically aimed at Bryce. Ryan Wilson decided that he was going to accuse Bryce of targeting, and I'm going to put this forward real quick because I was not asked, nor were any members of the staff asked about this before this accusation was made. The Bryce came to me weeks before saying that he knew that this was probably coming down the pipe and what he wanted me to do about it, because he and Ryan did not get along for reasons we won't get into here that are unrelated to our game. I said to him that any decision that has to come about regarding Ryan or any of the Triad characters cannot in any way involve him making any sort of decision. The decision was then made by other members of law enforcement within the characters, ones that I trusted not to be in Bryce's particular circle of friends. Brian was one of them. I can get you the other list of them if you want. But I was privy to all the details of said conversations and said meetings. There was a related statement that the accusations were based on an OOC Facebook conversation. This is not true. That Facebook conversation was never brought up in any of the conversations regarding the Triad member's supposed disloyalty. It was the basis on diegetic or in-game information, mainly overheard conversations during the actual LARP and other accusations that were made by other members. The evidence was produced by, amongst other people, Rachel and Bryce, but also several other characters. And the conclusion to arrest them was made by somebody else, by 3 other members of the law enforcement groups, and the decision on what the punishment would be was actually taken out by Mike Scalca's character, Gander. So, to set that as a background to all of this, it's unfortunate that certain people have decided they're not going to play anymore based on these events. However, I don't consider the accusations being made in this regard as valid, nor did anyone ever discuss it with me before they made said accusations. No, and when I attempted to talk with Ryan about him, he simply did not want to hear it. So, in this particular case, my sympathies are limited because of those facts. And that is my statement as lead GM. Now, I'm more than open to questions, but this is how I see things going into this conversation. And that's all I had to say. So if you guys want to ask questions, please come on.
I just have a slight clarification question in regards to that. Was Ryan's character one of the 2 Triad members that were arrested?
No, Ryan was not actually present in that game, and on Saturday or Sunday, I can't remember which, during the game, he posted to the Facebook group, which I removed because it was inappropriate for the group, because we don't need a rage quit post on our Facebook group, and then posted it on his own Facebook that it would not be coming back. He was not actually present at the game. He simply got information about what's going on OOC from players. I'm assuming from the other Triad players.
Did the 2 Triad players have any feelings that they were targeted because of out-of-character reasons?
I don't think Teros player David Quirum did contact Clint. I have not had the opportunity to talk with him. He seemed upset that supposedly they were being targeted because of a Facebook conversation, which is not true, and I have no idea how that information that conclusion was come to. There was basically, some people had some theories about who ratted them out that weren't accurate, but apparently are being spread around. Clint, could you summarize what David said? He's the one you actually talked to him, so.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what transpired in that particular conversation. But yeah, I think like I said, there were feelings that there may have been targeting involved. He felt unfairly prosecuted when it happened, and made the statement that he was kind of getting tired with the game anyway, and decided he was just going to commit suicide and leave it at that. Regarding Ryan, I know that there was a lot of talk that he was involved in this as well, and even though he wasn't in game, it came out in game that he's going to be essentially arrested the moment he's seen again and thrown into jail. And I'm sure that's probably one reason why he reacted the way he did during game, is when he found out that he wasn't playing and was going to be arrested and thrown into jail the moment he came back into game. So that probably prompted some of his decisions. Yeah, I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add. the players, like we've already discussed, felt like there was maybe some out of game influences that led to this happening in the game, um, and they decided. I guess the two players decided to walk away because of it. You know, the third player that was involved in this. Uh,
James
I,
Leavings, to be clear.
what's that?
The third player was James Leavings, just to be clear on
Okay.
it.
So James was, a pretty good sport about this. He said that, I talked to him several times during the game as a player rep because he was in jail. And my main concern from that is he was in jail for quite a long time. And finally, I spoke to Todd at one point when nothing had really happened because of that. There had been no play around his jail time. They just left him in there. And Todd was able to, at that point in time, make sure that roleplay proceeded with his character so that his storyline kind of ran its course and he was able to get back into the course of play.
Yeah,
Now,
I went and prodded Mike Skalka, who plays Gander, and then he did a little steering and had Gander accelerate the proceedings so that we could, get James out of jail and he would sitting there being moored. So
yeah, so I mean that was from a play standpoint, I had concerns regarding that. If one person was
Absolutely.
basically stuck and not being able to have a good time during the game for an extended amount of time. Now James is really cool about it. I talked to him, like I said, I talked to him a couple of times, and he reiterated that while his character was really mad, he as a person was okay with the situation. You know, he was getting a little bored. There was one other guard that was guarding him the entire time, and I think they kind of kept each other company. But it was a situation that when we identified that it had gone on for what I felt was too long, then we got the game masters involved so that we could rectify it. Um, I haven't had a chance to follow up with James after the game to see how he would prefer it handled and what his feelings were during the situation. That is one piece that we might want to follow up on and get his opinion on the whole thing post game now that he's had a chance to think about it for a while.
Right. Okay, so I'm glad James feels that way, and I mean, when it comes to David and Ryan, I mean, the thing to emphasize is that this did not come out of the blue. I'm just I regret the fact that people think that this was mainly a OOC action and have cast shade on some of our players about it, and I don't see it as an OOC action. It's the product of literally half a year or a year of antagonism, and no one was like hauled out and shot because of this. The only player that died is the one that shot themselves and decided that they were going to exit the game violently. I would prefer it not to have come this way, but I really, from a GM's perspective, I don't know how I can. I mitigated everything I could. I established rules for how people are to behave given OSC situations. Those were followed, and I don't know how we could have done any better without giving up on the idea that IC actions have IC consequences. So.
Lady, you had some comment earlier. I'm sorry, I cut you off with my question. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's okay. I mean, it sounds like Matt's already made up his mind on this, but I do want to make it clear that a number of Triad players have spoken to me and mentioned to me that they feel like either they have been targeted or that there is a large amount of antagonism towards them, more so perhaps than other groups in the game. And this is this whole situation was really unfortunate, and I'm feel really bad that people's feelings got hurt and people weren't able to have fun. I agree with Clint that I think the amount of time that James spent imprisoned or otherwise restricted was just really way too much. In my opinion, he's like Clint said, he's been a really great sport, and I talked to him, and he had a good attitude about it, but he was also very disappointed, and clearly he didn't come back to game on Sunday, and so that says something about how he felt about that. I think that the amount of time he spent in prison really was unacceptable because at some point you can say, okay, this is in game, but that's still a player behind that character, and they should not be just kept literally imprisoned for hours and hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, I really.
Um,
Sorry.
oh,
Time out, time out. Todd, how long did he actually spend in jail? I mean,
Let's see here. I think he was arrested at something like noon, 1 p.m., something like that. And when
yeah,
I went and talked to Mike about it was so I think he went at about noon, and when I talked to Mike about it was, oh man, 3 p.m. I don't quite remember exactly, but so he was in there for like
I
3 hours.
3 hours or so.
when I talked to James, he said that he was imprisoned or restricted about 6 to 7 hours.
Oh, was it that long?
Yeah, and I mean, you can talk to him about it. You know, maybe
I
I,
would say even 3 hours is kind of long. It
I,
really seems
I would
like
agree.
It doesn't.
the gameplay there really needs to kind of be overhauled. Kind of like when we had that discussion about the in-game torture methods and how a long,
yeah.
long time ago, that conversation. I feel like a new conversation in the same kind of vein needs to be like imprisonment and stuff. Because yeah, just sitting, even people on watch back when I used to go to game, um, like that was boring. So I
Yeah,
can't imagine just sitting in a cage for even 3 hours. I would say like an hour, hour and a half would be my limit.
I think that
Um,
because this is a shorter game, we really need to be cognizant of the amount of time we're spending on this kind of role play, especially when it's role play that's not necessarily super fun. Like clearly he and his guard created their own role play and their own drama, and that's awesome. But you know that's still a long time to just be sitting around. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm agreeing. Yeah, go ahead.
I also will say that you know we're focusing on these three players, and I feel that that's not really fair because I've spoken to 6 or 7 players who have all expressed enough concern about this that they're either definitely not coming back or are strongly considering not coming back.
all triad?
No, not all triad.
Just clarifying, making
Yeah.
sure.
So clearly, this to us, you know, it may seem like something that only involves these three people, but these feelings, which have been brought up before, are more pervasive than perhaps we're really thinking about.
Another clarifying question. I'm sorry. Is their feelings based off of the fact they believe that because they're being targeted out of character, or is it because they feel like their plots of trying to be the sneaky plots are getting targeted out of character? Like,
Um,
does
that's
that make sense?
That's
Is
a
that
really good question. I mean, some people have said that they feel like it's out of character, and some people have said that they feel like it's leftover animosity because of some negative events that happened in Triad very, very early on in the game. Some people have said that it's just people just deciding to do a lot of PvP that maybe not everybody's on board with. So it's a mixture of things.
Okay. Um, my response to that feeling is that they are entitled to feel that way. This is not the product of to walk back. This is not the product of random PvP. In fact, there has been no PvP except for one person PvPing himself. This is the product of game after game of antagonism and open conspiracy at points that's been pretty obvious to a lot of people saying it. This is a completely in character action. I cannot. If someone wants to engage in a conspiracy to hoard and break away, or is gives the impression they are doing so. And there's been some pretty open statements by Triad members that I can remember, which come up as antagonistic. And so, in the face of such antagonism, and in the face of like ongoing friction, I cannot. My big question is, what could we have done? What should be done differently? Because what it seems like is that we have icy actions having icy consequences. We have one group of characters who are law enforcement and agreeing that something needs to be done about people who are openly undermining their authority, in which there is pretty strong accusations of hoarding. We have them not unilaterally deciding to punish people, but going to a completely different authority figure and saying, we've captured these guys, this is our evidence, what should be done with them. The actual thing was corporal punishment, not execution. And so I'm kind of in a bind here, because what should have happened otherwise? Should the characters whose job and whose modus operandi is to enforce the rule of the government ignore the fact that this group, and it wasn't, they weren't rounding up all of the triad to shoot them. They were rounding up 3 specific people who had made specific statements and had been overheard having a specific conversation and interrogating them. And under interrogation, one of them admitted what they'd done. He claimed it was misinterpreted, but a judgment was reached based on the questioning and the evidence at hand. So the idea that this is the equivalent of, say, just rounding up and engaging in PvP for fun is not. I mean, you can feel that way, but it's just not true. And especially when the GMing staff took specific steps to stop this from having the pale of, this is just targeting it or joyriding around and attacking characters. So that's really a question of more we could be done. Now, as far as what happened to James's character with him being restricted, he was punished. He had the crap beaten out of him, and then he was placed under guard, which I could say be 6 or 7 hours worth of roleplay, but he was still allowed to move about the camp for a majority of that time. I think the 3 hours is unfortunate, and I think we can take steps and we can mention that that's not a good thing to do, and in the future the GMing staff could say, like, get a move on this crap. Michelle actually mentioned that it was James specifically requesting jail to witness his questioning that delayed it because they had to go find her, and she was busy. Obviously, spending 2 or 3 hours in jail is not a good time. And I'm glad that we could at least have like guard role play and stuff like that. And we can establish that as a guideline as don't do everything in your power not to put someone in a suck position for the day, right? That's not fun. There's more interesting things to do. So I don't know if the triad players want to feel that way and the other players want to feel that way. Their feelings are obviously legitimate to them, and I'm sorry they feel that way, but we have taken more steps than many other games I've participated in to make sure that these things were controlled as much as possible. And we've taken, I mean...
I would just ask, Sadie, you said you spoke to about 6 or 7 different players, and their reasons for their feelings varied, as you said. Yeah. But did any of them have a suggestion on how they felt their specific situation could have been handled differently, or?
I think that a lot of the players felt like the kind of deal that had been made between the Triad and the UEA was going to be a lot more positive than it ended up being, clearly. And from my perspective, I think that there were maybe some misinterpretations of what was acceptable, and clearly I don't know the specifics of the deal that they made, but I know that there were Triad players that were very happy with the deal that was made with the UEA for them to have a little bit more independence, a little small amount of autonomy that they could have, and were very surprised to then come in game and be arrested.
But
Um,
and I mean, that really seems like a in-character misinterpretation. Did they have any like what the GM staff could have done better, maybe what the player council could have done better?
Unfortunately not. I mean, I can talk to those people again and see if they do have suggestions because, I honestly I don't know exactly what could be done differently. But I think that when you do have this many players that are expressing this as a concern, then you need to take it seriously. And unfortunately, I don't have a solution to that. I don't know what it is.
Well, you have kind of an interesting dynamic here in that you have a game where you've set up so that there's factions. So I think you have a lot of people coming into the gameplay expecting that there's going to be faction versus faction friction. Now, on top of that, you have the survivalist aspect where everyone's supposed to come together and work together and be cooperative. So you have these two dichotomies kind of at odds at one another. So you have some people that interpret it probably that, hey, this game is about us working together to survive, while you have other people that are more interested in the friction aspects between the different factions. And so you probably have different players that are playing the game differently. Now, throw on top of that, you don't have complete transparency. So Gander could have made an agreement with the UEA, and the players that are supposed to enforce the rules may have no idea what that agreement was. So you have all these weird factors coming into play in here that are going to lead to potential misunderstandings. Now, how do you rectify that? That's a trickier issue. I think that would involve greater steering at the kind of administrator level or the leadership level of these different factions. I think you're going to have to maybe get game masters more involved in certain aspects of the game to make sure that certain pieces of information are shared amongst the players. I don't know. That's something that would have to be explored, but it's kind of a tricky issue.
And my opinion on that is just the fact that that really seems like in-game situations and in-game issues. If the administration of the UEA is not passing on their agreements to their underlings and the law enforcement, and then the law enforcement makes a bad decision, well, that just seems like it's in-character action has an in-character consequence. Or when characters decide to hoard supplies, whether that's the one faction versus another, not necessarily saying Triad. Maybe it's the I don't know
Well, I
transhumans.
mean, how do we separate people who are upset about not winning from people who feel that it was not fair?
Yeah, that's my point. Is the fact that if they feel like they made a certain contract in game and it wasn't upheld in game, well, they should feel bad about that in game.
Well,
But if they feel like that they were targeted on an out of character level because of it, like for example, I'm telling my buddy Bill over here that I'm gonna screw over the UEA out of character, and Bill decides to tell everybody out of character about it, and then I get arrested in game. Not saying that's what happened, just saying that if like that kind of situation, then we should step in and that kind of stuff. But if it's bad contracts in game, break out that fine print magnifying glass in game, because we really can't step in there, because that's just if the UEA administration, sorry Gander, isn't doing a great job on administrating, then that sucks for them. But
And I want to be clear that's just my interpretation, that I think that people were disappointed that that deal didn't really go very positively, and nobody told me that. That's my interpretation.
Okay.
Right.
What the specific wording that people told me is that they felt they were unfairly treated and antagonized and targeted. And I kind of have a unique perspective of this because I'm in the Neoprim group. And I guess I'll just put it right out there that the Neoprims were hoarding, and the Neoprims have talked about making a new colony, and splitting away from the current colony. They've talked about all the same things that supposedly the Triad were talking about, and I never experienced anything that the Triad have in game, and I don't know that any Neoprim players have. You know, the
Well,
if I'm
actually,
Well,
we
I can
did. We had
I
some
can
great
speak to that.
wordplay.
I can directly address that. Teresa's character was actually threatened with being shot one game directly by the administration. She was interrogated, so was Two Feather at one point. There was, a all but arrest at one point where basically Grant told Teresa's character, I cannot remember her character's name for the moment,
Asa.
La Aza, that if you continue doing this, I will shoot you all. So, and she was marched into Grant's office by I think it was U.S. soldiers or Rangers or something like that. So there was an equivalent action taking place at one point.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that there were clearly in-game consequences, but no one was imprisoned or received corporal punishment, so I don't think it's exactly equal from my perspective.
No, I don't think it was.
So,
And maybe right there, just the RP needs to be relooked over. So I would say in the law enforcement section, maybe we just need to figure out, all right, guys, how are we going to punch these, and maybe we can make it standardized across the board.
So
Yeah.
tell me this: who would you rather preside over the situation, Gander or Grant? It
yeah,
seems like it kind of played out like I would expect it had Gander gotten involved as opposed to Grant. Grant is more maneuvering, and I think Gander's
And
a
that's a
little more
great
quick.
point. That's a great point because
And
who the different administrating characters over presiding over each different situation is going to have different outcomes. If
Yeah.
Gander gets his way, lots of people would be in prison. But Grant's more okay. I'm going to target the head of the Neoprims, and we're going to have a man to woman conversation, and this is how it's going to go, and they're going to listen to me.
Yeah.
Gander's way
And
more.
I think
I do want to acknowledge that things like even regardless of how the whole triad thing happened, imprisonment and punishment and even unlawful imprisonment and punishment are totally in game and totally within genre. And I absolutely recognize that, and I think that other people do as well. My concern really is that this feeling from players, and these concerns are much more widespread than just the 3 players that we've been focusing on. And I don't have a good solution to that, unfortunately. I wish I did.
I would
Yeah.
kind of like give a little call out to all those viewing. If you guys do have a concern about this, where you're feeling targeted on an out of character level, where you're feeling that situations in game are being handled unfairly on an out of character level, then yeah, I would encourage them to definitely come to Sadie, Clint, or myself, or when the new player council gets into office, the new player council, and for the new player council to actually physically like write down. You don't have to have names or anything, but write down the complaint and possibly like a suggestion from the person they're talking to, because I mean, these are the players that are living it. These are the players that are having these feelings, and I would definitely encourage them to continue to talk to the player council and to have the player council like write down complaint and suggestion for improvement, because we're all sitting here going, oh, maybe we can figure out a way to improve this, maybe. And I mean, these players are the ones that are actually feeling those feelings and are living it, and I'm sure that they have some sort of suggestion themselves. And so getting their feedback would be great. And I mean, like you guys have the after game surveys, so do those.
Yeah.
Yeah, the moment I heard that this incident happened, I went to find the players that were in prison to talk to them and find out what the situation was. Unfortunately, by the time I got over there, David had already left the game. So I think from a player standpoint, we need to inform the players that if they feel that there's some unfair targeting involved or that they're not happy with the situation, before they just leave the game, why don't we try to reconcile it in-game with the game masters and the player reps? I think that's something that we potentially should stress a little further and try to figure out what's going on in the heat of the moment instead of people walking away and quitting the game.
Yeah, and I mean, to a certain extent, I keep going back to is what could we have done differently, and the thing is that 1 or 2 games ago there was an agreement struck with Triad that there wasn't going to be the central warehouse system. There was going to be a quota system, and part of that was actually me intervening on behalf of the Triad people to say that, well, you know what, this is really inefficient. Um, this is this really is inefficient. This is onerous. This is troublesome. Going going back and forth to this warehouse. So I actually nudged the administration to go with a quota system instead. The result of the incarcerations in general at this point is, one, I'm curious as to why there was imprisonment as opposed to just going straight to the interrogation, which would probably do it. Maybe it had something to do with what people said. Maybe it had to do with logistical things. But there needs to be awareness on the part of every player not to put people in a position where they suck. Right? They have to sit there and eat suck for hours at a time. I think that's a very valid criticism. Right, you eat a shit sandwich for 2 hours, and that really isn't best, unless you're a crazy Nord. I mean, Harrison might be into it, but that's about the extent of it. So I think that's a good piece of advice for players. I can't say what I would have done if I was there. I could, in retrospect, say if we had had another GM on the field, maybe we could have been aware of this and we could have had eyes on it a little bit more. Obviously, we were operating at a 66% power that day. But the other thing we can say as a GM staff is that in a situation where you have players who are being bound or in other ways inhibited by other players, there needs to be GM awareness of that, and we as a staff need to keep an eye on it.
Even I'm sorry, I'm interrupting again.
Go ahead.
But even if it's him sitting in the prison for 3 hours, maybe the GM's taking him for an NPC shift of some sort.
Sure. I mean, I don't know why he was there, and maybe I will ask why he was there for 3 hours, because there's varying stories about how long he was there and why he was there, and obviously time passes differently for different people depending on what they're doing.
Sure.
So maybe the enforcers, and they're running around, and I think it was very long, but since he was sitting there watching paint dry, it seemed a lot longer.
I do have some timestamps from James, so I can ask him for those timestamps to see if we can get a more
Cool. Yeah,
exact.
let's say Tyler might be able to give a better idea of the time than me, because I was mostly busy with other stuff while that was going on and wasn't actually. Tyler was more involved with it than I was.
Right. And while empirical evidence is always great, no matter how long it actually took, we're left with the impression that someone was left in a cell for hours and hours and hours, which isn't a good impression to have, obviously. So we can say that in the future we're going to keep an eye on that particular type of stuff, and we're going to do that. As far as the agreement between Triad and stuff breaking down, nothing about the fact that they only arrested 3 players or 3 characters, and they were based on, how to put this, it was based on something more other than just the agreement. What it was based on the fact that there was open antagonism at many points, particularly from Chen and Teiro, and that there was a discussion that was ongoing that was overheard. There was an accusation basically made that people heard them openly plotting to make a break-off colony. So in this particular case, law enforcement decides to haul these guys in and interrogate them. Now, obviously, that wasn't as efficient as we would have hoped, right? And we can address that. But it wasn't like this was a sandbag. This wasn't like, your average vampire game cornering the prince and killing him. This was a rather moderate action from law enforcement. So, yes, I understand that's the feeling, and we will take steps, and I have taken steps to make sure that while we have this like authoritarian government, it is a realistic authoritarian government that actually lets people breathe rather than trying to regulate their every action. The uh, that's why I pushed the UEA people to work with a quota system. That's why I pushed to a lot of things to make it so that there's this kind of strongman idea about government, and I have actively tried to move the UEA players to realize that they're part of a much more functional group there that tries to work with these various factions while maintaining their like primacy over them. Um, and I will continue to do that, and I will continue to try to make things playable, and continue to make things. No, sorry, my cat is attacking my screen. Um, and I can promise you, if there's just like this ongoing, like you can't even play Triad, because in-game lore, the UEA uses Triad and tries to harness their profit-seeking and for their own purposes. And this is perfectly acceptable within, Triad mentality. There might be varying opinions on how well this works, but nobody in UEA is going to suddenly go rogue and decide to start, like, putting an end to this neo-capitalist bullshit, because at the end of the day, that is a UEA-approved meanscape, and they were sent here by United Earth to do a particular job, and if they're doing it within reason, then they're in this. So I think that I will continue to take steps to mitigate the situation. No. I'll continue to take steps to mitigate the situation and make sure that every faction is playable and every faction can can interact with the game in a useful manner without being completely shit on. Except for, of course, Aurelia's prisoners who live for that. But that's about it. And that's the assurance I can give everyone, is that I don't want any of the factions to suck. I don't want them all to be completely undermined and changed. And if I see that happening, if I see it being too restrictive, I will take steps to change that. Speech over.
So I know like I'm bringing forward a lot of criticism and stuff like that, and I do want to say that, despite all this that I'm talking about, I'm really proud that the staff was able to make that game happen, because I was really worried that it wasn't going to happen at all. And Matt, I'm also really glad that you're doing better, and I hope you continue to improve. And so I don't want all of this talk to downplay what the staff was able to do in such a short amount of time, while you were recovering and going through something that was probably pretty harrowing and scary. So I just want to make sure that you know that, and the rest of the staff knows that.
And Sadie, I want you to know, I understand why you're the bearer of most of the bad news. I know that you're closest to, or closer than the other members, since you're, in Austin and you've known a lot of them for a while, that they are obviously going to be the ones who feel most comfortable talking to you. So I'm not going to shoot the messenger. I think that would be counterproductive to the entire reason we have a player council. And I understand why you're doing that, and I don't, I think that we've had a useful conversation here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, obviously this is a ongoing problem for any game that has a competitive nature to it, and we need to, but I think that we can handle it in the most productive way possible, and I think that this has been a productive conversation, even if it doesn't, even if it doesn't move, even if it's not like we figured out world peace here, I think we've at least had a productive conversation. Everyone's had their say, and I think that we've come up with good actions that we can take.
Yeah, my plan moving forward is I'm going to try and talk a little bit more to some of the players that have come to me that I've spoken to, and see if any of them have specific suggestions as to how to improve this, and and hopefully mitigate those feelings. And if I get some good information from them, then I'll definitely bring that to staff and the player council.
And God, what was I going to say? Yeah, and the only thing I would say, I've tried not to criticize the players in general, but there's been some assumptions made, and we all know what assuming does about how things went down. If there's any concerns about how something happened or the details are sketchy or anything like that, please talk to either the game staff or the player council and like slow your roll a little bit until you get the facts. We try to be as transparent as possible. We try to we try to be fair as much as we can, and we have, with the like specifically, apparently it was being said that an OOC Facebook conversation was used to convict these people, and that never even came up, and no one knew about it. But that's like something that's been circulating around. And I know LARPers are, one step below a knitting circle on the rumor mill, but I would just encourage players, if they have questions like that, especially when it comes to impropriety or something similar approach, we have multiple avenues for you for a reason. We have the ability to communicate with us through a mediator for a reason. So if you have questions like that, I mean, you obviously can come to your own conclusions about things, but please just try to get our side of it first. And more importantly, if there is an actual impropriety going on, that gives us the opportunity to address and redress it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do we have any further feedback? Is what happened with the drop pod? What?
Oh yeah, that's one thing that could drop pod. The drop pod was left out at the site. It was a combination. It's nobody's fault. I didn't ask about it. I think it just kind of fell through the cracks. It was left out in the field, and Calvin wasn't able to get back and get it. I found out Wednesday and went into the hospital Thursday. I found I was still out there Wednesday from Calvin. Thursday, and I know you mentioned it, Todd, but I just didn't put two and two together. Apologies. And it was left out there. It's now in the field. It's now turned over. It got hit by the storms. And we're probably going to need help coming out and righting it. I will post when Calvin's planning on being out there with his truck. The problem is the ground needs to dry out a little bit before he can even get his truck out there. Luckily, that thing was built like a tank. What was that?
It's supposed to rain more this week. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
It might be a good idea to try to get it. Is it still on its side?
Yes.
Okay. It might be a good idea to try to get it righted as soon as possible, even before we can actually haul it out, because as long as it's sitting on its side, then the wooden parts are in contact with water. And I know it's painted, but that paint might not be totally waterproof, and it might be just soaking up water from the ground.
Yeah, I think that we're going to need a drop pod raising. Unfortunately, until I have my surgery, I am on a 15-pound limit. So if we could get people out there, I think that would be fantastic. It is going to be a complete mess. Hopefully it will be recoverable, but, excuse me. No, there you go. You're down there.
Yeah, we might
It's a
want
kitty.
to organize some volunteers and see how soon we go raise it. I mean, I can't help because I'm in Houston, but for the people that are in the Austin area, because it's probably like getting worse with each passing minute. So
yeah. And obviously this was a suck weekend to do it. We will get together on Facebook and figure that out. We'll probably start a poll and figure out when people could be out there, because it'll probably take about 6 people or more in order to do that. but hopefully it won't be too bad. So, and Calvin definitely needs time for that. Oh, there's one question. Let's see. What lies beyond the colony? Find out in game.
What about the new site in Dale? I know that you said on Facebook that we weren't going to be moving to that site right away, but I don't know if that's something that's going to happen in the future.
Obviously, it has to do with how quickly the site punks can get something up. I think when I last discussed it with them, January was probably going to be the earliest. Obviously, if we can get it done before, probably if they really double time at November. The site looks really great. They're going to have a really good layout to it, and they're just going to be picking up and moving like pieces of it. However, the Devil's Bayou site will remain open the entire time, and just they'll be changing things over piecemeal. I will discuss with the site punks over the summer and see what's going on with that. So.
Cute.
Yeah, so I think that's it. Any other questions?
I can't think of any.
Any closing statements?
Uh,
Well, last arguments, Your Honor. I just want to say I'm really impressed with how everyone came together this game, and that goes with both the staff and the players. I'm glad the players are understanding as to what was going on last game. I'm happy everybody who voiced their support and was supportive through being in the hospital. I will likely be going back in to the hospital over this in the next month or so, where they're gonna finally nip this sucker in the bud and get rid of the organ in my body that's trying to kill me that isn't my brain. And yes, but new question, Rachel Phillips, what are you planning on working on over the summer? Actually, this is a good thing to bring up. We are planning on revamping the website. We may be revamping before the summer, but definitely before the end of the next year. We're going to be revamping some of the mechanics and implementation and the skill tree and all that. So we may have a rebuild going on. We are going to start looking at the possibility of expanding to other colony sites going into sometime in 2017. And we're going to do some baseline work on doing some game design and balancing as well. One of the features on the website is that we're going to have transparency as far as life paths go, so people don't have to go back and forth and all that stuff. And we're going to have some transparency on the skill catalog and the equipment available. So we're going to definitely work on expanding the tech tree. We've had a lot of proof of concept stuff in the system so far. The software is in beta, but the actual rules are definitely in alpha. So as we go forward, we're going to take steps to change that. So we should be good on that, and we're going to make it so there's a clear path of all that kind of stuff. And as part of revamping the website, we're going to take a look at least getting a basic version of two downtime systems that are going to be. There's the exploration overworld game, which is going to allow people to build stuff and explore during downtime. And there's going to be the community system, which is going to allow people to have loyalties to be members of different groups within the game that convey them different bonuses. And that's when we're going to have bonuses for a lot of skills which aren't particularly good at this point, like trade, diplomacy, that kind of stuff. Will be revamped. We're going to make it so that if you own an item, you can own world objects like forges and pieces of equipment and stuff like that, and you'll actually be able to print out the QR codes for them and like create your own props in game for them, so you'll have a little bit more control. And world objects can either be owned by individuals or by communities. So you could have like a Triad Corp group which has their facility that they build and make stuff off of, or you can have a neo-primitive group which has, you know, a leader and activities and stuff like that. So that is the intent going into the summer. So, you know, not very much complete at all. And that is what we were planning on doing over the summer.
I have a slight question. You said exploring other colony sites. Is that going to be completely virtual with the downtime exploration, or are we going to have physical sites to explore?
Well, no, he's talking about having like Planetfall Houston or Planetfall Dallas. You know, having actual separate game sites.
Okay.
And then on top of that, there's going to be the overworld game where you're going to be able to explore the area like a world map on around Alpha and discover things. And you could find like a gold vein like 3 sectors out and mine it during downtime and stuff like that.
Cool.
Which should make things more interesting.
Yeah. And we can finally go build that outpost with the river that we've been talking about for a year.
I live in an outpost down by the river. All right. Cool. Last question. Any more questions? Any more questions?
No, all that remains is Emily's dancing.
And at the end, in the end, there's silence and a peppermint twist.
Silent dancing.
We need to get Emily into a goth club at some point. She's going to be brilliant.
Look,
We're picking butterflies. Picking
Neither
butterflies.
Todd or Clint are dancing, and I'm really disappointed. Like Matt's okay because he's weakened because of his illness.
I'm dancing. This is how big my refrigerator is.
Come on, Clint.
Big
I was
fish,
outside
little
doing yard
fish.
work
Put
before
it in
this
a
meeting. I was
box.
kind of tired. Sorry, guys.
Wimp.
Matt,
All right.
Matt says he
Maybe
doesn't.
I should do the sprinkler since I was doing yard work. For the lawnmower or something. I don't know.
All right. We've officially gotten the sillies.
Um,
Oh, Bryce had a question.
Yeah, he said
Bryce.
I called him Matt. Bryce. Duh. He doesn't think anybody knows how to use the Q&A. It's highly
There's a
possible.
little Q&A thing on the side of the thing.
Michelle and a couple of other people posted questions, so
Yeah. If
If you position your mouse near the left-hand side of the screen, a little toolbar will pop out. There's a button there that says Q&A inside a little blue speech balloon, and then if you click on that, then that causes the Q&A interface to pop out, where you can do stuff with it.
yeah. And also, people who wanted to participate, the only way to participate is through the Q&A section. The only people here are your elected player council. Which, final note, at the end of the summer, we will have a player council election in August. There is no term limits on the player council, so I invite all of you who qualify to put your hat in again. You must have attended at least 2 games in the last season and be an adult. Yeah.
I know. I feel so bad every time I get on to this player council. I'm like, none of these new players even know my face. Like, they have no idea who I am. I'm just that weirdo that's on the player council.
we should just pretend you've been at every game, and we're like, what do you mean you've never met Emily? She's here all the time.
You didn't see that cool thing she did last time?
Yeah, that was great. She took out like 5 clickers all at once.
It'll be like that MASH episode where that doctor that doesn't exist and everyone's just missed them, so all the veteran players will act like Emily just left.
Yeah.
You know? And they'll tell stories about how badass she was during the clicker raids.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be great, guys. Keep doing that. No, now that I've graduated college, gotten a job that's not police work yet, but I'm working on that. But I've gotten a job in the interim, and I'm working on other goals with that. So I will be able to, and I've moved, so I'm like officially in Dallas for good. So I should have the funds and time to attend Planetfall regularly now. So.
Woo! All right, we won't look.
Therefore, you can be part of the 2018 Player Council. And then you'll move to another state. We should probably put something in there that you can actually, if you move to another state, you can resign. And we can have a special election. I wouldn't have asked any of you to resign. I think all of you have great input, and I'm glad that the players are able to communicate with you and that sort of thing. So yeah. As far as other player council members, player council candidates, if you are interested, there's the Planetfall governance doc, which I will link to going up to the election. It outlines both the council powers and how everything works. It's also in the forum under announcements. You then place yourself on the ballot by sending us an email. And that is that. I encourage anyone who's interested to look at it. I really, really like the fact that we have 2 women on our player council. And I hope to see more. And I hope that everyone feels comfortable and willing to participate because, speaking of which, the fact that we have a player council got a call out on player safety and player communication at Living Games by Brody Atwater, who they did a speech on it and specifically referenced us. And by the way, I did not come up with this idea. I stole it from Eve Online. So.
Okay.
Also, player council dance parties are mandatory, so whoever's on the new council, just remember that.
Yeah. That's where the hookers and blow come out.
Oh, God.
Wait, is this being recorded down?
We're not supposed to tell them about that part. That's
secret. That's the secret introductory meeting.
Emily, you implemented it.
That's what I'm saying it's a secret, and I claim no responsibility. Plausible deniability.
Get a job as a cop so you can raid the evidence locker for us, okay?
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm gonna call this to a close. If anyone, unless anyone has something to say that isn't snark in the Q&A. God, we have a snarky player base.
Remembering my face. Also, yeah, Bryce. I'm gonna guard all the gates. All the time.
This explains when the clickers always get in.
Yeah, no,
All
actually.
Right. All right, I'm calling this to close. Good job, guys. And thank you for serving for last year, and thank you to everybody for making last game great. Bye-bye.